Okay, here we go. We are live. So guys, it's been a while. I apologize about that. Very busy times, and this is a hobby. But thanks everyone who watched before and left some good comments and everything. Before we get into this one, just a quick update. Got some interesting things coming up. I've been contacted by a very good boat builder brand who we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to do a pre-recorded interview with them about their boats, design philosophy, etc. And it's one of the boats that people have been commenting on. And then we'll do a live, probably do a live stream where people can join and actually ask these guys their questions about the boat. So that should be good. Also want to do a follow-up on the Alloship. I had a few comments below and apparently contact from someone who said they're going to buy the boat. I don't know if they've bought it because in my email I got an email from the broker which says it's still available, but you know, who knows. But a little bit of information. You may have seen that in the comments. But I think what I want to do is to share with you some of my influences on my philosophy in terms of what I like in boat design. And I think fundamentally there's two ways to look at boat design. Design it from the inside out or from the outside in. And what I mean by that, when you design it from the inside out, you're looking at maybe the interior space, the comfort. When I say comfort, the space and furnishing comfort, because obviously on a boat, movement has a huge role to play in comfort, as opposed to outside in, which looks at the way where the boat will be used and is it appropriate for the conditions it's going to operate under, right? And that will determine be the priority in your design, and then you work with the interior space you have. And I think, you know, one of the things with modern yacht design that I see, a lot of boats designed from the inside out, and they use some very smart modeling techniques, design techniques to make the boat, you know, safe and keep it upright. Whether that's optimal or not, that's for you to decide. What I just want to do on this channel is share with you my thoughts, and just a couple of things about that I don't want to tell you what to think. This is not like the empty bucket theory of education where a student comes in and they're filled up by the teacher. I am not that. If you want an expert, there are a lot better experts than me. What I would want to do is start a conversation, okay? And I'll tell you what I think, why I think it, be as transparent as I can. And it's really to trigger thoughts in your mind about what you want about a boat, so that when you go to get the boat you want, you are fully informed, okay? And maybe I'll dive into some of that philosophy a bit later on. Not to make it, you know, it's not complicated. It's just it's good to uncover some of our assumptions. But that said, that's been enough blah blah for now. What I want to do today is to take a quick look at one aspect of the 1979 Fastnet. So as you may know, 1979 Fastnet is a yacht that starts from the south coast of England. They sail out to the southern tip of Ireland to the Fastnet Rock. They go around the rock and they come back again. Okay, south coast of England, interesting place to navigate, but it really gets interesting when you get in that section between England and Ireland, because you got the Atlantic coming in there through constricted waterways. I've done some sea kayaking around Cornwall. When the tides change, you get overfalls. Very fast moving water, and when you're in water which moves 10 k's an hour, and you're in a boat that moves 3-4 k's an hour, you need to be really particular about your planning, and it makes you hyper aware of the conditions. Now, a yacht is not going to be as inshore as a kayak, but you really do get a lot of big water moving in between, immovable objects, Ireland and England. So 1979 Fastnet, I think the main story that people know is that the race started, the weather forecast was looking good, and then the weather changed, okay? And if you read the official report, it was mixed messages. The English and the French were sending out different messages, forecasting errors, different things. And at the end of the day, that was kind of the conclusion, more or less, of the official report, as I understand it. And, the lessons of that were about better planning. Now, the cover of the book I'm about to show you, this one, Seaworthiness, The Forgotten Factor, by C.A. Marchej. I'm not sure how you pronounce that name, Marchaj. So he was not satisfied with that result, because I think in the assumption of the report was that if the weather forecast had been correct, then people would not have been in that condition, everything would have been okay. And there is truth in that, don't get me wrong. But as I understand this Marches, he says that, well, look, if you're going to be in sea, you need to prepare for the worst situation. And in his mind, the boats were not appropriate to the conditions, okay? And that's obvious when you look at the number of fatalities, you look at the number of sinkings, the abandoned ships, etc. It was a pretty horrific, situation. And we'll see some. It's not a full story about the Fastnet. We're focused on one thing, but you'll see some of that come through. And in this book, what he does, he looks at the paradigm of modern yachting. And now I know this is mainly a motorboat channel, and it is. I don't really want to get into sailing. I grew up sailing. I've had enough, to be honest. But what he does, he looks at modern boat design, and he analyzes it and he picks apart the problems, and he compares it to maybe some more traditional designs and to some fundamental design principles. And for me, this was a very important book. I think, a lot of my influence about yacht design, boat design, comes from this, because he argues it very well, at least in my view. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in boat design, I highly recommend it. Takes a little bit of thinking. It's not overcomplicated, and can really explain some fundamental, yacht design issues well. And I think I'll do some other videos where I want to go into, some of those design concepts. But here, he picked apart the statistics very simply, okay? And we'll get into that. But the book's about seaworthiness, and he talks about two definitions, two aspects of a boat. One is a seaworthiness and one's a sea kindliness. Now, his definitions are seaworthiness, strong, durable, and watertight construction. So it's going to last, water's not going to get in, fine. Good survival characteristics in extreme weather conditions. And this is why I've added this one in: all systems operational in extreme weather conditions. So, you don't want things breaking on you when you need them the most. And sea kindliness, easy motion, freedom from jerky, breakneck, rolling motion. And his quote, that quality in a boat which enables her to receive the forces of a violent sea and to render them kindly to animate beings. And again, spelling mistake. Animate beings and inanimate objects. And what he means by animate beings is live things. I mean, be you, your crew, your dog, your cat, and inanimate objects. So, the things that are going to get thrown around or potentially get thrown around the cabin and break. So I have taken this and simplified it a little bit. And I've said seaworthiness is the boat stays above the water. It stays the right side up, so the bottom of the hull stays in contact with the water, and your decks stay above, facing the sky. Has directional stability and can be controlled, right? So that's my definition. And sea kindliness, the crew are not injured or become sick from the motion of the ship, and they maintain the ability to operate the ship. So, if you're thrown across the cabin and you break your arm, you're going to have some problems. If your crew, you get seasick, you're going to have some problems. So, really the sea kindness is about the livability, the habitability of the ship in any condition. So, and we'll get into this. And I think the key idea of this presentation is to look at an example of the difference between these, but also a bit of an idea how they correlate. And we'll get into that. So these are the statistics that Marches pulled together, and I'll quickly explain it. So this is a waterfall graph, and basically they read the numbers from left to right, and then you subtract. So 303 started, 85 finished. So you had, was it 218 boats did not finish the race, and then of the ones that started, 194 retired. So they said this is enough. So they pulled off to the mainland, the nearest port, and they said we're not going to complete the race. 24 yachts were abandoned. So this is where the crew said that, okay, I think we're going to sink. Things are really bad. We're jumping in the life raft. And that's a pretty extreme decision. We'll touch on it briefly here, but there's a good argument to not getting your life raft in a storm, only if it's 100% sure you're going under, okay? And we'll go into that a little bit here. And again, you know, these are all rules of thumb. I think the key thing is you as crew, you need to have the ability to make the right decisions at the right time. So it's very easy sitting here in my little home office to say these things and for you to think about it. But if you're in a emergency situation, you know, that's really that instinct that you know you need to develop. So, and that takes us to the 85 who finished. But of the 25 who abandoned ships, 5 of those were lost, never found again, so we can assume they're sunk, and 19 were found. And we'll get into that because I think the difference between that 5 and that 19 shows the distinction between seaworthiness and sea kindliness. And sadly, overall, 15 were lost. And you know, it's a long time ago, but that's tragic. Really, it's tragic. You know, this was meant to be a fun few days out, take some work, you know, have a bit of fun, come back and go to the office again or whatever you do, and tell the story. But nobody expected to die, right? And you can get the book and you can read it, but you know, some of the preparations were a little bit like shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. You know, no matter how well, some of these boats were very well prepared, but they were prepared within a paradigm. And that paradigm was really their yacht design, their hull design, you know, different things. So you can have the best fitted out ship with the best safety equipment, the best crew planning, etc., etc., etc. But if the fundamental design of that boat is wrong, none of that is going to count, because, you know, it's really not going to affect your main factor. And we'll explain one of those factors today. So yeah, just you know, have a moment of silence for these people. And this is what really we're trying to do a little bit. I won't say, you know, don't want to be over dramatic, but you know, I think I've said it before. I have 3 priorities when I'm on the water. 1 is to be safe, 2 is to have fun, and the 3 is to complete the journey. Okay. Not always possible. Sometimes you're not having fun while you're trying to complete the journey. But you know, if you can keep that priority, but safety is the number 1. Okay, so you've got to be stressed out, but you know, fundamentally you're safe and you get back, that's okay. And nobody wants to die. You don't want to die, I don't want to die, your family doesn't want you to die, Coast Guard doesn't want you to die. So let's just take the lessons and make good decisions. And I think, you know, the good decision is get the right boat for the conditions you're going under, and that's really important to understand. So here's a different graph. On the left, you've got the length of the boat, starting from the smallest to the bottom. So from 22 to 22.9 feet, up to the biggest one, which is 42.1 to 70 feet, okay? And then we go down in the categories. So this is a percentage scale, so we can all see, you know, the relative success of the boats. But the blue isn't the ones that are finished. So of the large boats, basically, I didn't put the numbers here. Let me put the numbers here. You may not be able to see that. Give me a second. Live streaming, huh? Right, so in the largest category, 93% of boats over 42 foot finished, 33 to 42 feet, 64% finished, and 29 to 32.9, 43% finished. And then you get to the sort of the below 29 foot, and you really see it drop off, 9%, 10%, and then the 21 to 23 feet, 2% finished. So you can automatically see there's a correlation there with length. And there's another aspect, which I'm not going to do now, but in terms of the displacement of the boat is a really important one as well. So intuitively that makes sense. The bigger displacement, you know, you've got more inertia to overcome by the waves, etc. Your motions are going to be more dampened because that mass will you know, really dampen the motion. So, you know, one of the key lessons here is that the smaller the boat, the more vulnerable you are. And then we get into some of the other statistics. So the orange is the recovered, okay? And let me add some data labels there. You might be able to see that. I don't know if you can read that anyhow on this thing. So these were abandoned and later recovered. So 2% of the 33, well, first of all, over 42 foot, no boats were abandoned. Okay, the yellow is retired, so we had some retired, but no boats were abandoned. In the 33 to 42 foot range, we had 2% abandoned, and then abandoned was, we had one boat abandoned. 29 to 32 foot, okay, no boats were abandoned, so 57% retired. And then here we go into the smaller sizes. So, you know, basically 80% under 29 feet, all retired. And if we add these together, so in the 25.5 to 28.9, 9% were abandoned at sea. In the 23 to 26%, 14% were abandoned, and then the 21 to 23%, 15% were abandoned. So you can see the smaller the size, the more ships were abandoned. So they felt that there was a need, the boat was sinking, and they felt it was urgent that they got into their life rafts, okay? And if we look at the lives lost, over 29 feet, no lives were lost, but in the, you know, below 29 feet, all the death was in the smaller boats, okay? And again, you can read the book, but some of those died on the boat, some of those were lost at sea in the life raft, okay? And there's some pretty, really heart-wrenching stories. You know, you're there with your mates, and the guy's just drifting away, and there's nothing you can do, right? You just got to watch somebody you know very well, you know, drift away. And I think there was a story about a son and his father died. I mean, these are the real things. You know, if you look at the brochures, it's all about sunny days and, you know, champagne on the deck. But if you want to cross an ocean, or you want to do, you know, North Sea, you know, UK waters, for example, probably I haven't been in North American waters, but, you know, imagine you've got them too. You know, these are some of the things you really need to think about. You know, not being too dramatic here, but put yourself, read the books about the Fastnet or some of these disasters, and try and put yourself in those positions. It's a really important thing to get your head around what you're actually dealing with. So if we come back to the lost and found, here we've got 5 of the 14 boats abandoned, 5 were lost, so they sunk. And then of the 24 that were abandoned, 19 were later found. So people thought they were going to sink, or they were safer in the life raft, but, you know, they found the boats floating after. So to have a bit of think about this, right, around the terms of seaworthy and sea kindliness. The ones that were lost, sunk, were they seaworthy? Well, you can probably say no. We may not know exactly why they sunk. You know, a lot of these were rolled, either knocked down or completely rolled. Who knows? Maybe a hatch broke. You know, I don't know. The hull broke apart. Maybe we'll never know. So we know that they were not seaworthy because they sunk. In terms of my simple definition, they didn't stay above the water. Were they sea kindly? We don't really know. I can assume probably they were not sea kindly, because if we go to the next bit, we see that of the boats that were abandoned and found, you know, the boats were so uncomfortable, and the people felt so in danger, they thought it was safer to jump in the life raft. And, you know, again, a lot of this comes down to the boat design. And I've got some different things here. Work on a different presentation, but these are, Grimalkin is a famous one. I'm pretty sure this one was abandoned, later found. But you look at the design there, right? You've hardly got any boat in the water. You've got your weight in your keel, and you've got the mast, okay? So in terms of dampening that rolling motion, there's no hole in the water to dampen that rolling motion. You've got the keel, great, okay? But that only does limited amounts. You've got these fin keels, which, you know, at a serious angle of heeling, has hardly any traction. And you see that a lot, you know, especially under spinnaker, they broach and get out of control. And then when the mast breaks, you lose the damping motion from this high mast. And then because they're light fiberglass boats, again, there's not a lot of displacement. So what you'll find is these things will rock around like mad, okay? You just they're immersed like a cork on the ocean. They just get really knocked around a lot. So from reading the book, from what I understand, is that, you know, these light displacement boats, mast is gone. There's not a lot of boat in the water to keep it from moving around a lot. And they thought, oh shit, we're going under, or it's dangerous. And the crew's really getting thrown around a lot. And I had a Coleman, what did I have? I can't remember now. It was like a 1980s long keel, very round hull, 12-meter boat. And that thing, I tell you what, was rolly as hell. Just because, it was a good solid boat, but had a lot of roll on it. But you got hit side on, it would just roll. It could be quite violent, right? You really had to hang on. And being in a massive storm for hours and hours and hours, that just gets tiring, and that goes again to part of the sea kindliness. You're just gonna get tired. Whereas these are some of the evolution. This is from the book as well. Acclaim, fair use. Go buy the book. I really recommend it. And these are some of the older designs you can see. So Falmouth Key Punt, which is I believe late 18th, early 19th century maybe. And then you can see the change of the design from these, cutaway bow, deep keel. I mean, that's a very deep keel, right? So there's something called the AB ratio. We're not really going to go into it now. While we're talking about it, I've got a little slide here, and I've got another one presentation. You've got the AB ratio here, which is the B is the water below the water, the A is the area above the water, and you create a ratio. So this is a fairly modern ship, and I don't know what that ratio is here, maybe 4:1. You got 4 times more height above the water than you do below the water. And this is one of the key design features you can really see changing through the years. So this one here, if you take the below the water AB, the below the water, at least the depth and possibly the area, is greater than above the water. Okay, so that's where you get this pendulum stability, where it's really your weight is hanging from the buoyancy, so it makes it very difficult for it to flip. Again, another presentation, we'll get into it. But over the years, as they introduced the IOC rules, you can start to see the design changing. So 1891, I think that's just a bit before the rules, 1930, and you really see it here more in the modern yachts from the 60s onwards. You really see these long keels disappearing. It's more fin, less under the water, and they're really more designed to skit across the top of the water with minimum drag to go fast, which is great under certain conditions. But in those extreme conditions, are they going to be seaworthy? I wouldn't necessarily go on the ocean with a fin-keeled yacht. I just don't think the characteristics are great especially for rough weather if you get stuck out in the middle of nowhere. There's also a lot of reports of these keels falling off, the keel bolts fail, even on new boats. It may be rare, but still it's something you just don't want. And yeah, but it's a different sort of thing. And then also with the long keel sailing boats, we're talking about sailing boats here. In rough seas, you can hove to. So basically, you get your jib across on the windward side of the boat. You push your rudder into the wind, and you've got these combined forces where the front of the boat is trying to bear away. Your steering's trying to push you up in the wind, so you just sit sort of parallel to the wind, and that puts you across the waves, and you literally just float up and down. And there's a lot of stories of boats surviving in those conditions. Now, a motorboat, you can't do that necessarily, but maybe we get into some extreme weather motorboat survival skills in another day. So look, the real lesson there is that I think I've been critical before on a couple of the boats I've seen for their shallow V, flat bottoms, very low AB ratio. There's a lot more boat out of the water than in the water, and different things, and that means something high center of gravity, which they use ballast to balance that out. There's a couple of questions in the comments: are these boats seaworthy? Look, you have to decide that. Okay, I would say fundamentally they are. For a number of reasons. Okay, there is especially you get a rated, you get a Lloyd's rating or any of the other ratings, CE marks, etc. They're built to certain standards, and I think the key lesson here is that the bigger the boat, the higher displacement. We've spoken more about length and displacement here, but the bigger displacement, the more resistance there is to the weather conditions, to the force of the waves, the wind, etc. And a lot of the boats that we look around on this channel, these 60, 70 foot, 80 foot steel boats, with 100 tons, look, they're pretty solid things. Okay, now as long as they've got that they've got the weighting right on the boat, because I think we all know about the I keep forgetting the name of the brand, Northern Marine capsize. Look that up, Northern Marine capsize, where they just got the weighting of the keel completely wrong. They launched it, it rolled over to the side, and you can start to see the natural hull stability, the unweighted hull stability of that boat. It was more comfortable horizontal to the water than it wanted to lay horizontal to the water rather than upright, which is an interesting thing. So, length, displacement, and as long as your weighting is right, even if you've got a high center of gravity, look, you're going to stay upright. I would argue they may not be as sea kindly as deeper holes. For example, if you've got less depth below the water, the crew is going to be more above the water, so just on the turning moment you're going to get more angular momentum, more forces. Whether if you're in the bottom of the boat, even if your feet are below the waterline, we get these sailing boats with these hugely deep keels. So you can imagine, I know there's a good example here, if you had let me put a line or something here if I can, so you imagine your feet were, here we go, red, we'll make it fat if we can, may not be able to see it. If you imagine your feet are below here, you're going to be you're going to be a lot more comfortable than you are, standing on deck in violent motion. So there's other things like that to consider. So look, I'm going to leave it there for now. This is just it's a huge area, and this is a super simple example, which I've probably explained very badly, and I apologize for that. But the key thing is that correlation in the 1979 Fastnet between the length and displacement and the survivability of the boats. A lot of the big boats, big maxi yachts, they had fin keels, etc. Shallow holes, etc. But they were really compensated by mass. There was a little bit that the bigger boats, they didn't get caught in the storm. They were actually faster, so they moved past it. So there's it's quite a complex analysis to do to really get into it, because a lot of the smaller boats were slower, so they got caught in the eye of the storm and really got pelted. But even then, the big boats would have got caught in that storm, would have had a bigger chance of surviving. And again, the professional crew on board rather than the amateur crew, so there's a lot of different factors to get in there, but there is clearly a correlation here between the length, displacement of the boat and your safety. So look, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully that made some sense. I've been busy over the last couple of months. I've got a couple of things coming up. Leave your comments, and thanks again for watching. Again, I'm pleasantly surprised at